Sunshine Mission for Women and Children, located at Casa de Rosas in West Adams, Los Angeles, always welcomes everyone with the phrase, "There is always space for just one more." Known as LA's oldest women's shelter, it had witnessed its fair share of heart-wrenching and complex stories throughout the years. It was a woman who stumbled through its doors one fateful day in 1944. Disheveled, destitute, intoxicated, and utterly broken, she had hit rock bottom, seemingly just a step away from Skid Row. This was Olive Borden, a faded Hollywood star once celebrated for her radiant beauty. Back in her heyday, she had captivated audiences as the Joy Girl, a nickname that mirrored her dazzling smile and bubbly persona. Yet now, time, misfortune, and alcohol had completely changed her. Today, let us explore the tragic story of Olive Borden. She was born Olive Mary Borden on July 14, 1906 in Richmond, Virginia. Her father, Harry Borden, succumbed to typhoid fever when she was just an infant. Contrary to some public assumptions, Harry was not part of the wealthy Borden milk family and did not benefit from the company's fortune. However, there was another famous Borden in his lineage, Lizzie Borden, Olive's distant cousin. Lizzie was infamous for being acquitted of an 1892 double-axe murder that captured national headlines. After Harry's death, Olive's mother, Cecilia, known as Sibby, faced an uphill battle trying to provide for her young daughter. They relocated several times, moving from Richmond to Norfolk and eventually Baltimore by 1910, where Sibby found work as a sales clerk and hotel housekeeper. Life wasn't easy, but Olive found an escape in the world of cinema, which completely enchanted her. As Olive entered her teenage years, she watched her cousins, Natalie Johnson and her sister, pursue glitzy dreams in New York as performers in the renowned Ziegfeld Follies. Later, Natalie ventured to Los Angeles in 1922, taking up work as a cafe dancer. Olive envisioned herself under the Hollywood spotlight and expressed her ambitions with youthful optimism. Reflecting on her aspirations, she once remarked that she saw Hollywood as a magical city where fame, wealth, and success awaited those who found the key. She persuaded her mother to go to Hollywood, where she could find work in motion pictures, and they could have a cute little bungalow with flowers everywhere, and maybe even a Ford. Together, they packed up and set their sights westward, chasing the shimmering promise of Hollywood's dreams. Olive left school after finishing her sophomore year, while her mother, Sibby, quit her job as a hotel housekeeper. Together, they set off for the West Coast, where they moved in with Sibby's sister, Elizabeth Johnson, and her daughter, Natalie. Determined to break into the movie business, Olive rode the streetcars to different film studios, hoping to snag an acting role. Although Natalie, who was just starting her own showbiz journey, couldn't offer much support, she and Olive, who were remarkably similar in appearance, had a shared dream of making it big in Hollywood. At first glance, Natalie seemed better positioned for success, having been a Ziegfeld girl, a prestigious stepping stone to stardom, but it didn't take long for Olive, with her undeniable beauty and charm, to stand out as the one destined for stardom. The duo reached Los Angeles on a Tuesday, and by Thursday, Olive landed a small part in an Al Christie comedy. Her responsibility: capture the camera's attention with her stunning looks and emulate the elegance of actress Lila Lee. Sounds simple enough, right? Not quite. The director wasn't impressed and scolded Olive, saying she'd never succeed as an actress and ought to return to school. For Olive, his harsh words were crushing. That evening, she sobbed in her mother's arms, devastated by her first taste of rejection in the industry. Despite her rough start, Olive wasn't ready to give up. She relentlessly visited studios, but her efforts were met with a constant stream of no's. As the rejections piled up, their financial situation worsened. Unable to survive on dreams alone, the family decided to open a candy store to make ends meet. Unfortunately, the business flopped, shutting down 6 months later due to poor sales. Life in Los Angeles was proving far tougher than they had anticipated, and the prospect of returning to Virginia loomed heavily over them. Then, in 1923, Olive's luck began to shift. She scored minor roles in films like Children of Jazz and Pola. During the filming of Pola, a cameraman suggested she tone down her makeup and adopt a more natural style. Olive took the advice to heart, and it paid off. It wasn't long before she caught the attention of Max Sennett, leading to a spot as one of his famous bathing beauties. This was a huge break. The bathing beauties weren't just eye candy, they were wildly popular, starring in short films and touring beaches for beauty contests. Olive's striking figure quickly set her apart, and soon, offers for comedies began rolling in. One such offer came from Hal Roach, one of Hollywood's top directors at the time. Her growing reputation also caught the eye of producer Paul Bern. Bern cast Olive in small roles in The Dressmaker from Paris and Grounds for Divorce, both released in 1925. When Olive couldn't afford the dress required for her part in The Dressmaker from Paris, Bern generously bought it for her. Both of them even dated during this period. Olive's career continued gaining momentum with supporting roles in The Happy Warrior and a starring role in The Overland Limited. Her newfound success grabbed the attention of Fox Studios and legendary cowboy actor Tom Mix, who cast her alongside him in The Yankee Señor and My Own Pal. These films, both released in 1925, marked Olive's big breakthrough. Her name was gaining recognition in Hollywood. In 1925, Olive Borden was recognized as one of the Wampus Baby Stars, a prestigious promotional campaign run by the Western Association of Motion Picture Advertisers. Each year, they selected 13 up-and-coming actresses they believed were destined for stardom, and they often got it right. Just the year before, Clara Bow had been chosen, and in subsequent years, household names like Joan Crawford, Ginger Rogers, Fay Wray, and Mary Astor joined the list. Interestingly, Olive wasn't the only one in her family to receive this honor in 1925. Her cousin, Natalie Joyce, was also selected. Shortly after, Olive's career took a major leap forward when Fox offered her a long-term contract, making her one of their highest-paid stars with an impressive $1,500 weekly salary. The public eagerly followed her career, and Fox cast her in popular films. One of these was John Ford's classic Western Three Bad Men, where she starred alongside George O'Brien. However, the production of Three Bad Men came with challenges. While filming in the Mojave Desert in October 1925, Olive, along with fellow actresses Priscilla Bonner and Grace Gordon, fell gravely ill with typhoid fever, delaying the shoot. During this time, Olive and George O'Brien began a passionate romance. O'Brien, already a major star thanks to his role in The Iron Horse, quickly became part of a Hollywood power couple with Olive, capturing the media's attention. Fox capitalized on their chemistry by casting them together again in the 1926 romantic comedy Fig Leaves, a playful film about the battle of the sexes. This beautiful couple wore nothing but fig leaves. In just a few months, Olive had gone from playing minor vamp roles in short films to landing starring roles in major productions. Following her success in Three Bad Men, writer Virginia Morris interviewed the 20-year-old actress. Morris described Olive as petite, standing just over 5 feet tall and weighing only 105 pounds, with childish features, big brown eyes and black curls, comparing her to the wistfulness of Lillian Gish and the youthful energy of Mary Pickford, but with a unique boyish charm all her own. During the interview, Olive admitted that when she first started, she embraced the chance to play comedic vamps, trusting that costumes and makeup would transform her into the character. Now, as a leading lady, she felt more fulfilled, confident that her talent wasn't confined to one type of role. As her fame grew, so did Olive's taste for luxury. She quickly developed an extravagant lifestyle that left her drowning in debt. It's said that she once felt insulted when a store clerk showed her a fur coat priced under $3,500. She employed a maid who accompanied her to film sets every morning, had a chauffeur on call 24/7 to drive her around in a lavish French limousine, and even purchased a Beverly Hills mansion for $65,000 from actor Hobart Bosworth. To maintain her glamorous life, She staffed the home with 4 servants, ensuring she never had to lift a finger. Olive Borden was a Hollywood darling, praised by critics. At just 21 years old, she had it all: stunning beauty, a romance with the dashing George O'Brien, and a career that seemed unstoppable. She wasn't blind to the pitfalls of fame, though. In an interview, she once reflected on how fame and fortune could overwhelm young actresses. She often leaned toward sensual roles, with her wardrobe dominated by negligées, custom-made for each film. In The Country Beyond, Olive and her mother traveled to Jasper National Park in Canada for filming. The story followed Olive as an orphan falling for a fugitive, played by Ralph Graves. Her performance, however, didn't receive the usual glowing praise. Critics commented that while Olive was a graceful lead, she tended to overdo her portrayal of a child of nature in the wilderness scenes, though she shone brighter when the setting shifted to the Broadway stage. Her next film, Raoul Walsh's The Monkey Talks, was a bizarre circus drama. Olive played the role of Olivette, a tightrope artist who got caught up in a crazy circus scheme to disguise a short acrobat as a talking monkey. Things spiraled when the monkey fell in love with Olivette, leading to chaos when a chimpanzee tried to kill her. The heroic monkey saved her but tragically died in the process. The film's outlandish plot didn't make it a classic, but Olive's presence in daring circus costumes kept audiences captivated. In The Joy Girl, Olive ventured to Palm Beach, Florida, to play a carefree flapper who ditched her chauffeur boyfriend for a wealthy playboy, played by Neil Hamilton. This film became the pinnacle of her career, earning her the nickname The Joy Girl. Directed by Alan Dwan, it was a massive success and catapulted Olive to new heights of fame. A print of the film is even preserved today in New York's Museum of Modern Art. Another notable project was The Secret Studio, where Olive played an artist's model, primarily posing in the latest negligées of the time. Critics took notice of her physical appeal, with Variety remarking that the film seemed designed to showcase her stunning figure, which was the main draw of the production. Similarly, in Pajamas, another film that highlighted her beauty, paired Olive with May Bellamy and Dolores Del Rio, and ignited the screen. Olive Borden eventually grew frustrated with the shallow roles she was often handed, and the constant focus on her appearance. She once admitted that she had spent years hoping for better parts. She pleaded for meaningful roles instead of being reduced to a mere dress dummy. By 1927, she was earning $2,000 a week for the film Come to My House. But just as Olive solidified her status as one of the leading silent film stars, drama brewed behind the scenes. Fox Studios, inspired by Paramount's policy of cutting actors' salaries by 10%, decided to implement the same. However, Fox didn't anticipate the blowback, particularly from Olive. She refused to accept less than what she believed she deserved, and sent her legal team to reject the pay cut. From her perspective, she had earned her status and would not tolerate being undervalued. Ultimately, Olive met with executives, but she stood firm and walked away from Fox rather than settle for a reduced salary. Looking back, Olive admitted that her desire for wealth wasn't necessarily practical, but rather an ego boost. Earning large sums brought her satisfaction. She acknowledged that accumulating wealth often became about inflating her sense of self-worth, enabling her to buy extravagant things and boost her prestige. But after she severed ties with the studio, she underwent a personal transformation. Olive sold her lavish mansion, got rid of most of her belongings, let go of her staff, and cleared her debts. She then moved into a modest beach cottage in an effort to simplify her life. This period of change also led to the end of her relationship with actor George O'Brien. Reports suggested Olive was livid when George went on a European trip she had strongly opposed. Meanwhile, George's family apparently didn't approve of Olive's reputation, which they deemed reckless and provocative. Decades later, George's son, Darcy O'Brien, shared further details, explaining that the trip was part vacation and part professional visit to meet German director F.W. Murnau, related to Sunrise. George was also traveling with his parents, as his father, retired San Francisco police chief, had health issues. Darcy added that Olive's financial troubles, including debts rumored to involve stagehands, only added to the tension during this time. Then, in early 1928, while Olive was hiding from the limelight at her beach cottage, a bizarre and tragic story linked to her made headlines in Texas. The newspapers exploded with sensational accounts, such as bank teller brother of star killed and death reveals identity of noted actress. The story detailed the fatal car accident of Joe Alton Tinkle, a 24-year-old bank worker whose death surprisingly revealed his connection to Olive Borden, whose real name was Sybil Tinkle. Despite the tragedy, it was reported that Olive, informed of her brother's passing, chose not to return to Texas for his funeral. Studio publicists were notorious for tweaking ages, names, and even fabricating glamorous backstories to sell an image. But the strange case of Olive Borden and Sybil Tinkle stands out as one of the most puzzling instances of mistaken identity. In the 1990s, the Tinkle family in Texas insisted that Olive Borden, a celebrated film star, was actually their relative. Yet there's no concrete evidence to suggest Olive ever spent time in Texas outside of film shoots. Natalie Joy, who worked closely with Olive, admitted in 1991 that she had never heard of the Tinkle name, saying she only knew Olive as Borden. Whether Olive ever addressed these claims remains a mystery, but it's likely she chose to stay silent, especially given the personal struggles she faced during that period. After losing her lucrative Fox contract, Olive found herself in a downward spiral. The emotional toll led her to heavy drinking. While she sought solace by the shores of Santa Monica, her Hollywood agent worked tirelessly to secure her a comeback. Despite her earlier declaration to leave acting behind, Olive needed to work, and studios like Columbia and RKO still saw value in her talent. An independent studio, Tiffany Stahl, was the first to offer her a role in The Albany Nightboat in 1928, marking the start of her return to the screen, followed by a contract with Columbia. With her career slowly regaining traction, Olive made some significant life changes. She left her beach house for a modest Hollywood apartment and embraced a bold new look. She traded her signature long locks for a short flapper-style bob and updated her wardrobe to reflect the era's trends. At first, the simpler lifestyle seemed to suit her. She once mentioned to writer Helen Luring how much she enjoyed the coziness of her new home, where she could easily talk to her mother without needing to write notes, as she had in her larger house. As Olive worked to rebuild her career, she also took time to reflect on her past decisions. She admitted regret over her earlier disputes about salary, acknowledging that it had given her a reputation as difficult to work with. She also expressed remorse for her arrogance. With the rise of sound films, Olive hoped to carve out a niche for herself, but she was grappling with an identity crisis. She openly shared that she didn't see herself as the exotic, dramatic type and had no interest in playing sophisticated roles. Instead, she wanted to excel as a comedic actress on screen and live a genuine, grounded life off-screen. However, her attempt to reinvent herself with the flapper look didn't resonate with audiences. By 1928, the flapper trend had already peaked, and fans longed for the Olive Borden they had come to love. The new image felt forced and unoriginal, leaving her struggling to win over new admirers. As the film industry transitioned to talkies, Olive faced yet another challenge. Over the next 2 years, she moved between studios like Columbia, FBO, and RKO, hoping to showcase her comedic talent. Unfortunately, the roles she landed were in low-budget films, romantic dramas, light society pieces, and crime stories that didn't give her the opportunity to shine as a comedian. Her mother, Cy Borden, took it upon herself to closely monitor Olive's progress, ensuring she stayed on the right track. Meanwhile, Olive worked diligently with a voice coach, aiming to soften her southern accent for the screen. Renowned cinematographer Joseph Walker collaborated with Olive on 2 films at Columbia, Virgin Lips, 1928, and The Eternal Woman, 1929, showcasing her talent during her peak years. But Cy's protective nature often crossed the line, especially on set. Walker recalled how Olive's mother, an imposing Irish woman with striking red hair, kept a watchful eye on everyone, refusing to let her daughter out of her sight. Paramount star Mary Bryan, who worked with Olive on The Social Lion, described her as reserved, saying Olive would leave immediately after wrapping her scenes, making it hard for others to connect with her. Despite her aloofness, Olive enjoyed the role, as it allowed her to explore her comedic abilities. Sadly, it turned out to be her last major film. After The Social Lion, Olive left Hollywood for New York, hoping to revive her career on stage. By autumn 1930, she appeared in productions like Escort and The Devil is a Lady. Critics praised her polished presence and charming voice, but the plays had short runs, closing after just 7 weeks. During this period, Olive crossed paths with a stockbroker named Theodore Spector, sparking hopes of financial stability and a fresh start. Her mother, ever cautious, sensed trouble, but Olive was ready to break free from her mother's grip. On March 28, 1931, she eloped with Spector. However, the marriage quickly spiraled into disaster. Settling in New York, Olive believed she was finally on the path to becoming what she once described as a real, honest-to-God woman. Unfortunately, Spector proved far from the partner she envisioned. Tensions arose, especially over Olive's career. By 1932, the couple had separated. Olive confessed that Spector wanted her to leave the stage, but her love for acting made that impossible. Things took a darker turn when Pearl Howarth Spector, who owned a beauty salon in Buffalo, claimed to be Theodore's wife. Spector was arrested for bigamy, and the scandal made national headlines with sensational titles like "Bigamy Laid to Husband of Olive Borden" and "Spector's Other Wife Says She's Still His." Olive, blindsided by the revelations, expressed her shock, saying she had known about Theodore's previous marriage but had assumed he was divorced. The scandal dominated headlines throughout 1932, keeping the public captivated. In May, a grand jury dismissed the bigamy charges against Teddy Spector, as Pearl couldn't provide legal proof that she was still married to him. By June, Pearl filed for divorce and took her case to court. During the proceedings, she described her 1919 marriage to Spector and how he had left her just 18 months later. For over a decade, Pearl had stayed silent, waiting for the right moment to act. Spector reportedly justified his actions by saying he had no choice. Miss Borden had threatened to jump off a building if he didn't marry her. Ultimately, Spector was cleared of wrongdoing, as Pearl lacked the evidence to prove their marriage was still valid. After the case concluded, Pearl expressed relief, saying she was glad to leave the marriage behind. She described him as a tall, good-looking brute, but made it clear she was done with him. With the ordeal behind her, she returned to running her beauty salon, the Rouge Box. Meanwhile, Olive, Spector's other wife, was deeply embarrassed by the scandal. Although Spector was acquitted, she sought an annulment and found herself back in court by November 1932. The media eagerly covered her court appearance, with one newspaper describing her as a striking figure, dark-haired, full-lipped, and elegantly dressed in a silk frock and mink coat. After the annulment was finalized, Olive took a brief vacation in England. What was meant to be a short trip turned into an extended stay when actor-director Monty Banks convinced her to star in Leave It to Me, a British International Pictures production. By May 1934, Olive was working on Chloe, Love is Calling, a low-budget film directed by Marshall Neylan. While the movie marked the end of her acting career, it also sparked a fleeting romance with Neylan during the shoot. In a surprising twist later that year, Olive married John Moeller, a 26-year-old railroad technician, and moved into his modest 3-room apartment on Long Island. Determined to keep this marriage private, she used the name Mary Borden on their marriage license and humorously listed her occupation as nun. For a while, Olive seemed content to leave the spotlight behind. In 1935, she briefly toured as part of a Hollywood revue, but soon disappeared from public life altogether, seemingly embracing a quieter, simpler existence. However, her marriage to Moeller quickly unraveled. Financial struggles forced Olive to take on regular jobs to make ends meet. Using the name Olive Mueller, she worked various roles throughout the late 1930s and early 1940s, including stints as a nurse's aide, postal clerk, and mail carrier. It seemed the once glamorous star had traded fame for an ordinary life, though it came with its own set of challenges. In December 1942, Olive Borden joined the Women's Army Corps, taking on roles as a chauffeur and ambulance driver. During her service, she earned an Army citation for bravery after intercepting an enemy ammunition truck. By December 1943, journalist Jimmy Fidler shared that Olive, following her divorce in Reno, was considering a return to Hollywood. However, years of heavy drinking during her marriage had left her physically weakened. Struggling financially, she ended up seeking shelter at the Sunshine Mission for Women. When Olive returned to Hollywood in November 1944, she wasn't looking to resume her acting career. Columnist Dorothy Manners described her as a heroine. For a while, she managed to scrape by with various jobs, but as she admitted, things always seemed to fall apart. Broke and in poor health, she moved into the Sunshine Mission for Women and Children with her mother. There, she spent 2 years doing humble tasks like cleaning floors, washing windows, and caring for abandoned babies. The mission's founder, Essie Bingley West, fondly recalled how they called her Ollie and how her beauty still shone through, even in her struggles. In 1946, Olive organized the mission's Christmas pageant, an experience that brought her a sense of contentment. She remarked that she had finally found something Hollywood couldn't give her: happiness. When asked about her last film role, she simply smiled in silence. Her mother, Sibby, later admitted that Olive occasionally grew restless and missed her days in the film industry, wondering if she had been too overprotective of her daughter. However, the pageant stirred painful memories of Olive's once glorious career, and the emotional weight became too much. She abruptly left the mission and ended up living on Skid Row. Her mother searched tirelessly for her and eventually found her staying at a rundown hotel on Main Street. Despite Sibby's pleas for her to return to the mission, Olive chose to remain in the hotel. Over the next 2 months, Sibby continued visiting her, offering small amounts of money to help her survive. By late September, Sibby found Olive gravely ill with pneumonia and barely conscious in her hotel room. She brought her back to the mission, where they tried to nurse her back to health. Olive expressed a glimmer of hope, saying that, although her world had crumbled, she believed the doctors would help her recover. She even considered staying at the mission to assist her mother. Tragically, Olive's condition worsened, and on October 1, 1947, she passed away in her mother's arms at the age of 41. The Harrisburg Evening News once reported that silent film actress Olive Borden, known for her striking beauty and captivating presence on screen, passed away at a Skid Row mission just 5 miles from the glitzy Hollywood that had long forgotten her. When she arrived at the mission, sick, destitute, and worn down by life, she brought with her only 2 mementos from her time as a celebrated star: a photograph of herself in her prime, which she tucked into a dressing table mirror, and a scrapbook overflowing with clippings from her heyday. The actress, who had once dazzled audiences in films like Half Marriage and Love in the Desert, was just 41 years old when she died. A small funeral service was held at the mission's chapel 2 days later. Among the few attendees from the film world were director John Boland and actor Cornelius Keefe. George O'Brien, Olive's former co-star and ex-fiancé, was aware of her passing but chose not to attend. Darcy O'Brien, George's son, later shared that his mother had encouraged George to go to the funeral, but he declined, likely out of respect for her feelings. Olive was ultimately laid to rest at Forest Lawn Cemetery in Glendale. Reflecting on Olive's tragic end, writer Alan Williams noted in American Weekly magazine that her death barely registered in Hollywood. To him, Olive had become a forgotten relic of a bygone era, a stark reminder of the fleeting nature of Hollywood's adoration. Thank you for listening. Don't forget to subscribe so you can vote on future videos and stay up to date with our latest uploads.